Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. This is Hunter here, and yeah, we're about to get a little heavy here, because we're here to talk about Moonlight, and Moonlight, who was written and directed by Barry Jenkins. Now, if you don't know that name, I can't blame you because he wrote this movie almost 8 years, almost, yeah, actually almost exactly 8 years ago, almost. He wrote this movie called Medicine for Melancholy, which, if you haven't seen that, you should. He was the writer and director on that, and he was really labeled an indie darling after that, and then he just kind of poofed, and this is his big, coming out party. And I hate to ruin my reviews before I get into it, but this isn't a matter of if this is one of the best films of the year. It's really just going to depend on where it ends up on my list. It may be the best film of the year, and the only reason I am not convincingly saying that is because I'm almost paranoid that something will come out in the next month that'll make me go, "Oh, this is better than Moonlight." But to jump in here, this is a I'm gonna try really hard to review this, but I'm gonna be very vague at points because I want you guys to go out and experience this and to support this movie, because this is a movie that is, dare I say, perfect. This movie follows the story of Chiron, who's called Little when he's a kid, and it's really about him growing up in just the harshest of environments and really trying to not only discover what he's supposed to do in life, but to just survive. And before I kind of jump in here, I need to give shout outs to Alex Hibbert, who I believe played Little, uh, the smallest version of him. Ashton Sanders, who played him when he was a teenager, and then Trevante Rhodes, who played him as an adult. This film is divided up pretty cleanly into three separate acts. So you get him when he's a kid. I don't believe they say how old he is. I believe he's like 8, 9, around there. You get him as a teenager, so he's about 14, 15. And then you get him as a man, a young man. You get him around, he's late 20s, I would say. This film, I'm gonna be totally honest with you. I went and saw this right after I saw Bad Santa, so I go in this movie. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling giggly and all that. This movie really made me feel quite somber, leaving the theater. It's a really hard movie to watch, so I would not recommend watching this if you know something good has happened to you recently. But to say that this movie isn't just so well done, and it really focuses on something that I've said, and that I've alluded to on prior podcasts and have talked about with family members and friends and everything. The gay community is pretty loving in general, I would say, as far as once you get into the community. But there really has not been a big outreach when it comes uh, to the urban community, to the black community when it comes to men. Uh, Black men, it's almost like black men are just waiting for someone gay to be around so they can call them a faggot. And I've said that many times, and it's really depressing. And honestly, this is one of the first movies, if not the first movie, that I went, wow, they are finding the isolation that I feel like comes in the urban community without being overly preachy about it, but also being a young gay black kid trying to find his way. That can't be easy, and this movie really captures the isolation, the fear, the expectations that are put on a black man, especially growing up in such an urban community. This takes place in Miami, and this little he his real name is Chiron. He is just against everything, whether it's there's no dad in the house, to his mom being a drug addict, to the fact that he's getting bullied whenever he goes to school from a young age. On top of that, your heart just breaks for this kid, and he's really just trying to figure it out. And at many points, trying to figure out by himself. Uh, as when he's younger, he reaches out to Teresa, who's played by Janelle Monáe, who is amazing in this movie. Janelle Monáe, you need to start acting more because you were incredible in this. And also, he reaches out to Juan, who's played by Mahershala Ali, who of course is Cottonmouth, which he will always be Cottonmouth to me now. Of course, you know him from House of Cards as well. He plays Juan, and he is absolutely incredible in this. He's not in the movie enough, which is my only real critique. I wanted to see more of him. It really made me sad that he wasn't in this more, but he's in the movie for the first 20-25 minutes or so, and he has one of the best scenes in the movie with Little. Paraphrasing, Little says, asks him, he's like, Juan, what's a faggot? And Juan just looks at him, he's like, faggot is a word that gay people, straight people used to make gay people feel bad. And Little looks at him and just asks him, am I a faggot? And my heart just, I started crying in the theater. I had to actually go to the hallway for a few minutes and watch the movie from there, because I was crying so hard, because this little kid, he's really just trying to figure out what his place is in the world. And his mom's not there. She's doped up and is yelling at him and trying to like have sex with dudes while he's in the house and awake. She's being terrible. She's being an absolutely terrible mother, and this little kid is just trying to find acceptance, someone that he can talk to about what he's feeling. And there's very few people there, and the people he actually finds, something happens to them. Like they're either killed or they're taken away, or his mom X's them out. It's heartbreaking to watch this kid try to put it all together. And when he becomes a teenager, there is this point, and this is where I don't want to go into spoilers, but there's this scene where he's getting bullied, and I started crying all over again. I just couldn't believe how it really shows how ugly people can be, and your heart just breaks for the kid. It really does. And I've alluded to this on the podcast before, but, you know, as a kid, my mom was a photographer, and so seeing mixed couples, gay couples, it's never been a big deal for me. So when, you know, the gay marriage bill got passed and all that, I was stoked. But yeah, just being gay has never been a big deal, or it's never seemed like something that we should freak out about. But this movie does a good job of really showing that, hey, just because gay marriage is legal and, you know, it's recognized, doesn't mean that people still don't struggle through it. This really reminded me in the same way that I would say maybe like trying to think of an analogy now, in the way of something like maybe like there's certain action movies that are, here you go, how something like The Equalizer I thought was good, but John Wick just, I thought, improved on the formula. This reminded me of what I wanted Boyhood to be, because by the time I saw Boyhood, I thought Boyhood, and I still think Boyhood is a really good film. Best film of that year? No, not at all. But this film really captured the isolation and the despair and the true anguish that you would feel growing up in this environment. His mom, Paula, Little's mom, played by Naomi Harris, who just knocked this out of the park. There's this point where he comes home when he's in chapter 2, when he's a teenager, and she is just digging through his pockets like, I know you have money, I know Teresa gave you money, and she's just trying to get money for crack or meth or whatever it is. And, you know, he's almost in tears saying, I don't have any money, and she just digs through his backpack until she finds money. And it's a small scene, but it really shows just how desperate she is and how he just wants something for himself, and how she takes that away. there may not be a film this year where every act feels so warranted and needed, because the first act really sets that expectation where Littles is interacting with Juan. And then again, Mahershala Ali, sir, he deserves at least a Golden Globe, if not a freaking Oscar. He's amazing in this. But their interaction builds to the second act where he's a teenager, which builds to the third act where he's a man. And every act feels needed, every line of dialogue, nothing feels wasted. This film, and I don't use this term often, it's a perfect film. It really is. And I was sitting there about halfway through thinking, oh, you're at an A plus right now. Just please don't fuck this up so I can come back and give you fan fucking tastic. Please don't fuck this up. And the movie doesn't fuck up. When a movie opens up with Kendrick Lamar, how can I give it a bad grade? It's so well done. The score of this movie is great. The cinematography, the art direction, the director, as I mentioned earlier, Barry Jenkins, does such a good job with this. And there's these points where he blurs the camera, so there's this distortion feel to it, and he does it with Paula, he does it with Juan, and if memory serves, when he's focusing on Juan, it gets clearer. So it's like a documentary, but it stays hazy with his mom. And the reason being, his mom has just never been really not hazy around him, not been unfocused, hasn't been drugged up. And that plays out greatly when he's a young man. And this movie, and I'm so sad I can't get in this more because I just don't want to spoil it. So hence the dancing around everything. But he does meet this person named Kevin, and there is a scene, you'll know it when you see it, but this old man in the theater. By the way, to all the black people of Reno, I love the fact that 40, 50 black folks come out for Boo a Medea Halloween, but this movie comes out, which is really important, and I was the only black person in the theater with about 50 white people. So yeah, so there you go. But this is there's a scene in the movie that if you're, super, like, if you're a Trump voter, will probably get you really upset, like, oh, I don't want to see that. And I had to tell this guy to just shut the fuck up. And the reason I said that is because as often as we see boobs and full frontal nudity for women, this one scene that's about a minute, this guy just couldn't take. He was like, ew, gross. Get over yourself. But with that said, the way this movie ends, I mean, if there's a complaint, it's not even really a complaint. I just don't know even how you end a movie like this, if that makes sense. So when it ended, I went, oh, all right, but this is so heavy. I really don't know how you would end something, pardon me, like this. So that's me nitpicking, honestly. But with all that said, getting to my final thoughts here, this movie was so well done. It's deep, it's dark, there's humor in it, it's hopeful. It feels like you're almost on a trip at points. It feels dreamlike at points, but the way it's shot. But it's so well done, and it really captures, as I mentioned, that urban environment mixed with isolation without feeling preachy to you. And it focuses on gay black men, which, let's face it, we don't get movies very often depicting that. So this movie is borderline revolutionary in that sense alone. So I gotta give this a fan-fucking-tastic. I thought this movie was so well done. It needs to be on everybody's top 10 list. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not a matter of if it's on my top 10. It's just a matter of where it's going to fall. It will easily be my top 10, if not my top. So please go out and support this film. Let us know what you thought about this in the comments below. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter at JHunterRealPineapple. You can follow Mr. Colin O'Neill on Twitter at TheRealO'Neill. and follow Mr. Scott Neerman on Twitter at Neerman the First, and like us on Facebook and subscribe to us here on SoundCloud at The Real Pineapple 775. Guys, thank you so much. We'll have reviews up this week for Luke Cage Season 1, along with Allied and Moana. Guys, thank you so much. I will talk to you soon.